Welcome to a Labor Day weekend edition of The Wrap, your podcast to keep you caught up with everything going on in state politics. I am WRAL State Government Travis Fain.
And I am Will Doran.
And we're going to look ahead, to start by looking ahead, because Tuesday, Will, I think is a make or break day for gambling bills to widen the number of casinos, add 4 casinos potentially around the state, to legalize video poker, video lottery terminals, video gaming terminals, whatever we want to call these things. They're basically slot machines that could potentially be allowed in gas stations, restaurants, bars, places like that. The House Republican caucus, which is kind of the stopping point for these things so far, is going to meet on Tuesday, and we think they're going to decide whether or not there is enough support to put that kind of stuff in the budget, right?
And this very important debate on, kind of the future of how North Carolina goes in this direction, this is all going to be out in the public, right, Travis, for people to know how this debate goes down?
No. This will be all behind closed doors. The Republican and Democratic caucuses get to meet behind closed doors, despite in the Republican caucus's case being essentially the decision-making body of the North Carolina legislature. It's kind of a shame.
There you go.
Yeah, so they'll decide, and then whether or not that goes in the budget we expect to come up for a vote the week after that, so the week of September 11th. And, of course, the budget is delaying right now, raises, Medicaid expansion, which is something that lawmakers passed but tied to the budget. So there was some back and forth this week about when Medicaid expansion could start. And I think everyone agrees now December 1st. If they vote on the budget as is, we add all these people, hundreds of thousands of people, billions of dollars for hospitals and doctors as more people are insured by the government. That would not happen until December 1st. There had been some back and forth if they could do it sooner. Seems like everyone's on board December 1st at this point.
Yeah, there was hope it could be done by October 1st, but what you're saying is right. That doesn't seem to be a possibility anymore.
Yeah, we've blown through a few deadlines, but we actually believe that the budget will be passed the week of September 11th. That seems to be right.
They also told us it was going to be passed in, late May or early June. So,
yeah, I think, which is why I'm adding the caveat that I believe it this time. So, speaking of gambling, Bob Hall, longtime watchdog, one of the few people that goes through campaign finance records in any real detail. I mean, this takes a ton of time, people. He put out an analysis that I kind of summarized this week. Gambling money, marijuana money. So these industries want major changes. Gambling may move forward. Medical marijuana, we think, is dead for this legislative session. Maybe it comes back next year. But Bob found $500,000 in donations from people in this industry to state lawmakers, to political campaigns in the last 6 months. Now, you may be saying, but Travis, they've been in legislative session the last 6 months. And I should clarify, it's January 1st to June 30th. There's a lag because of the way the reporting's done. But you may say, Travis, they were in the session that time. Don't we have a session fundraising ban? No, we're not really. Not really. What we have is a ban on lobbyist giving at any time and lobbyist principals giving during the legislative session. Now, you may be saying, but Travis, surely the lobbyist principal is someone with business before the legislature. No, it is literally like the name of the person on a piece of paper who hires the lobbyist. If Will and I have a company together and we hire a lobbyist and I'm the lobbyist principal and Will's office is literally next to mine, we have the exact same goals. I can't give during session, but Will can. So
that's how it works.
Yeah, and this is on top of other casino money, video lottery terminal money we've talked about before that was given last year. And the biggest donor out of this was a guy out in Oklahoma with a company called Mockingbird Cannabis. And he gave $138,000 almost to state lawmakers over the last, the first 6 months of this year. So I would call that significant.
Yeah, weed is big business. And, in a state like North Carolina with tobacco drying up in demand, there's a lot of interest in putting that farmland to use in some other way.
And, of course, it's coming from out of state because that's where it's legal now is in other states. So it's a lot of local people, farmers who have grown hemp are worried they're going to get shut out eventually. When that happens, well, we don't think this year. By the way, on gambling, I'll mention real quickly, North Carolina Lottery Commission is contracting with a group called Gaming Laboratories International. They're going to assist with sports betting, which is a separate thing that we've already legalized in North Carolina, but sports betting on your phone. They're going to do rulemaking, licensing, all that kind of stuff. They've done this in other states. This contract was struck in mid-August, but I just noticed it this week, so I'm telling you about it again. That's a company called Gaming Laboratories International, contracting through the Lottery Commission. Supreme Court had some controversy this week. Tell us about. So we now have a Supreme Court Justice, Justice Anita Earls, suing the court infrastructure, the state Supreme Court infrastructure, in federal court.
That is correct. It's always a little weird to learn through a lawsuit that one of your articles has gotten a sitting Supreme Court justice investigated, but that happened to me earlier this week when she sued the Judicial Standards Commission and revealed that she has not just been under investigation once, but actually twice this year. Turns out the first time was after an article that I had written in February. That it appears the whoever started the investigation just kind of read the headline and didn't actually read the article and was confused as to what was actually being reported. And once they were informed as to what the article actually said, the investigation was dropped. But now there's a new investigation into her for making some comments in other interviews about racial and gender biases in the court system. And she was talking both kind of systemically, but also personally, saying that there were instances when, fellow justices had interrupted her during oral arguments. And she said something to the effect of, was it because of my race or my gender, my political party? Maybe it was all three.
Yeah, she's the only black woman on the state Supreme Court.
Correct. And one of only two Democrats in a court that is a 5-2 Republican to Democratic split.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting that the Standards Commission, which looks at whether or not judges are behaving ethically in North Carolina, because I mean, the rule is what? You can't hurt the confidence people have in the courts if you're a judge by saying bad, by talking bad about the courts. Is that
essentially? Yeah, the investigation says you're not supposed to. In terms of judicial ethics, this is not a criminal investigation, but it says ethically you're not supposed to do anything that sort of impugns the public trust in the courts. And Earls's response is, one, it's a First Amendment violation to say that she can't talk about her own personal experiences.
Hence the federal lawsuit.
And two, she says, kind of from a more philosophical argument, that she believes she's actually enhancing the credibility of the courts by acknowledging that these problems exist and trying to push for a fix to them.
Well, and she's not exactly the first person to ever wake up and notice that there might be a little bit of racism in the court system in the United States, and I assume other countries across the planet, including former Chief Justice Beasley, who, after the George Floyd's murder and the unrest, the protests, the riots, I mean, she came out and straight up said, we have got to recognize that our courts are imperfect and that racism plays a part in that. I mean, there was no real equivocation. I don't know that any investigation ever came of that these are secret unless we find out, which is
correct. Yeah, these stay secret, and so she may have been investigated for those comments, although we don't know.
I mean, it was like a press conference. Like she was at a podium talking about. I mean, it was on Supreme Court letterhead.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I should say that shocked a lot of people when she did it. That she so bluntly addressed and admitted the systemic racism in the criminal justice system. And, frankly, a lot of it was just quoting statistics. It wasn't, this is my opinion. It's,
Yeah, it wasn't out there.
Right.
It was not, what? Also, Paul Newby, in 2019, when he was on the campaign trail, he was at a fundraiser or something, a cookout or something, and he basically told Republicans, you got to vote for me because I am the last bulwark saving North Carolina society from these liberal justices on the Supreme Court. A bunch of AOCs, he called them, for Ocasio-Cortez, the congresswoman up in New York that at the time everybody was like the boogie woman of the Republican Party. And I mean, so it seems like this kind of stuff is kind of common.
Yeah. There was a big press conference by black women lawmakers and lawyers recently at the legislature where they put this pretty squarely on the GOP and, in no uncertain terms said, this is Republicans trying to return us to Jim Crow, taking the only black woman on the Supreme Court off. They were pulling no punches on accusing this of just being politically and racially motivated investigation into Earls. Now, of course, I asked the Republicans and they said, Democrats are just mad that they have lost 14 of the last 14 statewide judicial elections. They keep getting swept by the GOP.
I bet they are bad about that.
Yeah, they are quite mad, actually.
But I mean, it's taken on a life of its own. I mean, a federal lawsuit is a serious deal on its own. But I mean, this is something that maybe in the past would have been kind of quiet within the court. But now, I mean, it's gotten some national attention. So
yeah, when you've got the national news, looking into administrative issues inside the justice system of the state Supreme Court, that is not something that happens every day.
Turning our eyes to 2024 politics, Governor Roy Cooper this week endorsed Attorney General Josh Stein in the governor's race, the Democratic primary. This was ahead of what we think is probably a likely gubernatorial bid from Democratic Supreme Court Justice Michael Morgan, who is leaving the court, I think, as of Tuesday. I mean, he's basically done. He's stepping down early.
Yes.
And we think that's right before he's going to announce a run for governor.
Yeah, he wouldn't have to step down to run for governor, but it would be.
If he wanted to talk about it much, he would probably need to, though. I mean, with kind of what we just got through, like you can only say so many things when you're a judge.
Yeah.
No surprise here from Cooper, but I mean, it is Josh Stein was already a formidable candidate. We knew Roy Cooper was in his corner, but now that Cooper's coming out with this timing and saying, hey, I endorse this guy, that's a dynamic duo, to borrow a phrase, in the Democratic Party.
Yes, and it's not like Cooper is the first Democrat to endorse Stein. He's probably not even the 30th prominent Democrat to endorse Stein. So it's really going to be an uphill battle for anyone, whether it's Michael Morgan or anybody else in the party, to win that primary, just because the weight of the party does seem to be really coalescing behind Stein.
Looking at Congress, State Representative Erin Pare announced this week her plans to run for whatever the 13th congressional district becomes, because they're going to redraw all these districts. The legislature will probably, I don't know, in the next few months, a couple months. Her initial announcement ad is a lot of talk about standing up to the woke mob and how the woke mob hates me, and I'm going to stop the woke mob. So if you have woke mob related concerns, I dare say Erin Pare and probably the other multiple people running as Republicans in that race think they can handle.
Well, and the inside baseball of that announcement, and where she did, really kind of, because, Pare in the legislature is not really one of like the fire-breathing, far-right members of the
probably
legislature.
Wouldn't have won her seat in Wake County. He's the only Wake County Republican as a fire-breathing, or maybe not. I mean, the district leans a little Republican.
Yeah, but and that district right now is represented by a Democrat, Wiley Nickel. And on paper, it is technically a Republican-leaning district, but it's really even. It's like R+1, R+2 on paper. And so, the fact that you'd be launching a campaign with a, pretty kind of inflammatory video as she did, tells me that they're probably expecting that when that district gets redrawn, it's not going to be a swing district again.
It's not going to be.
It's going to be a pretty safe Republican.
Yeah. And not to give short shrift, there are other candidates in this race. Josh McConkey has already announced, I believe, Matt Shoemaker. I'm not sure if Devan Barber, who ran pretty strong last time in this race, I'm not sure if he's announced, but I mean he's expected to run. Bo Hines, who was the Republican nominee in this race and lost ultimately to Wiley Nickel, he's a potential candidate. Where he's living these days, I don't know. He is someone who has jumped from district to district, kind of looking for a good place to run, but Pare would not be the shoe-in candidate.
No, that was a really crowded primary last time. It's going to be a really crowded primary again this time, and it's anybody's guess as to who's going to come out on top.
Well, and I remember thinking, particularly with Barber, that if he gets another crack at this, that he might be difficult to beat, but I'm also not a Republican consultant in Johnston County, so
he played a close race with Hines in the primary last time. So
and Hines had all that Trump and Club for Growth money, and state auditor's race. Dave Bullock, who is now chairman of the UNC Board of Trustees, considering a run for state auditor. This was first reported by Business North Carolina. He is a Republican, like I said, on the Board of Trustees. There are a bunch of already announced candidates in that race that I had not followed maybe as close as I should, and that we rely often on Michael Bitzer and Old North State Politics. Chris Cooper, others work with him on this. They keep a spreadsheet, so if you go to Old North State Politics, it's a blog, political blog. Announced candidates in this auditor's race on the Republican side: Jack Clark, Charles Dingy, AJ
Dowd.
AJ Dowd, who has run many times for many years. Sorry, AJ, that I always look at the Daoud and I'm like, Daoud? That's my problem. Jim Key, who is a former Greensboro city councilman, and Jim Upchurch, who is a current Guilford County commissioner. They're all Republicans in that race. The Democratic side is just Beth Wood that I know of running for re-election.
Yeah, she's won re-election a lot, but I think Republicans smell blood in the water now because of the scandal.
The run-in that she had?
The hit and run.
Yeah, if you all don't know, she in December was at a holiday party and afterward ran a state-owned vehicle into another car.
Not just into, on top of.
On top of another car in downtown Raleigh. It was a parked car, and left the scene of the incident, and later acknowledged that she had two glasses of wine now. Just two.
That's all.
State Insurance Commissioner news, David Wheeler of Spruce Pine. He ran for the North Carolina Senate in 2018. He's running for Insurance Commissioner as a Democrat. This is also per the North Carolina Tribune. His platform is simple: no rate hikes.
There you go.
Mike Causey, the Republican, is running for re-election in that race. And the Tribune noted that former state representative Robert Brawley is also running. He's run before. He also ran for governor a few years back. He also did like 15 days in jail back in 2017 on a contempt of court charge. It was tied to a legal dispute he had with some business partners in the bail bond business, which is just part of a whole saga. He was the guy who called out a lot of his Republican colleagues on the State House floor over some back and forth with the bail bonds and like a monopoly being given. It was a whole mess. If you just want to Google WRAL bail bonds and probably my name, you'll read more than you want to about that.
It was a great series. It was enjoyable reading.
Yeah, anytime you're on a bail bond story, you know it's going to be a thing. In the governor's race, I'll try to get through this quickly. Andy Wells, the former state senator, current member of the Board of Transportation, coming after Mark Robinson in some online videos. They haven't gotten a lot of views yet, but I just think it's a noteworthy line of attack. He's basically said, Mark Robinson talks a lot, but he doesn't talk about casinos and gambling and the expansions that are happening in the General Assembly that he could or should be stopping. Now, I don't know how much power the lieutenant governor of North Carolina really has over any of that. Maybe we'll set that aside.
It is interesting, though, because, Robinson's biggest base is social conservatives. That's really where he gets a lot of his political power from. And this is a potential blind spot with gambling that Andy Wells is trying to exploit here. And, could be a winning strategy. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and Carter Wren, Wells' consultant, I'm sure, behind this line of attack. The latest video, the one that caught my eye, was VinFast. So that's the Vietnamese car manufacturer that's going to build electric vehicles in Chatham County. They're getting like $1.2 billion in incentives to do it from state and local governments, like the biggest incentive deal, I think, in state history. So Wells is basically blaming Robinson for that. I noted that twice he really hit that it was a Vietnamese company a couple of times in that video. I noticed
not American-made cars.
Yeah, he was clear about that. I would note though that a bunch of that money, that incentive money, comes from a transformational jobs program, as it was called in the state budget when it passed in 2018. When then Senator Andy Wells was in the state Senate and voted for it. There was a bunch more money later on in the 2022 budget after Wells had left the Senate. But like when that deal was announced, it had good quotes in it from support from Governor Roy Cooper, Tim Moore, Speaker of the House, Phil Berger, Senate Republican leader. I mean, it had huge support. It's not like Mark Robinson recruited them to North Carolina. Marvin Lewis was State Representative Marvin Lewis was in an accident this past Saturday, so about a week before you're listening to this probably. He hit a tree in another house in his neighborhood due to an unspecified medical incident, blacked out. He's wearing a heart monitor now. Representative Lucas is 81. He also broke really badly his ankle in March after, according to the Fayetteville Observer, blacking out in his garage. So our thoughts are with Representative Lucas and hope he's doing well. He when he had that ankle injury, I remember him being wheeled in to the legislature to show up to vote on a key vote. So
yeah, he missed some votes for a while there, but also made a show of when it mattered coming in to cast some votes.
Right. And this was around the time or before the time of Cotham, the Representative Cotham's party switch, or maybe right after. I don't know, but the numbers were key.
Right.
And he did show up. But so best wishes to him. But also, questions about his ability. I think how long he can continue to serve. Representative Pricey Harrison's birthday was on Thursday. No one else gets a shout out on this podcast for their birthday, but she has got to hold the record for the most PCSs, the most new committee bills that anyone has ever sent me to before the committee takes them up. So for that transparency, happy birthday, Pricey. We appreciate you.
We appreciate that. It would really help if the legislature would just put those online so the public could actually read them.
Before a meeting, yes. Quickly, also Tuesday, we talked about that big House Republican caucus, the future of gambling in North Carolina being decided. Also up 749. This is the bill changing the state board of election appointments. So that's going to be in House rules.
Yes, and this is something Republicans have tried to do basically ever since Roy Cooper was elected governor, because the law right now says that whichever party controls the governor's office also gets a majority on the board of elections. And so Republicans had been fine with that system when Pat McCrory was the governor. Obviously, they would prefer that the Democrats not have the majority on the board of elections. So they have put forward several different attempts to change the rules to make the board of elections evenly split between the two parties. That's been consistently ruled unconstitutional in the courts, shot down by voters at the ballot box. But they've got a supermajority now, as well as a new majority on the Supreme Court, and they are going to try it again and are expressing a lot of confidence that it will work this time.
And that is in House Rules 1 p.m. on Tuesday, also in Rules at 1 p.m. Senate Bill 154, it deals with occupancy taxes in a bunch of localities. Senate Bill 492, which is an adult corrections bill that passed the Senate like 46-2 and doesn't seem to have changed since then, but it's just kind of been coming in and out of committee. I would also note after Rules on Tuesday, Senator Tim Moffitt's alcohol bill, which I think is 527. We don't know what that sound was, which I think was 527, has Sunday sales, happy hours in it. That's in the ABC committee. This is a bill that got a hearing in June and is now going to presumably get a vote in committee, and we'll see where it goes from there. And that's all I got, Will. I don't know what's going to happen after Tuesday.
I mean, Tuesday could be a frustrating day, especially for some social conservatives, being asked to vote on gambling in the GOP caucus and immediately having a committee meeting about expanding alcohol rules. It's going to be a tough sell for a lot of Republicans.
Yeah, we thought the kind of erosion of that portion of the Republican Party's platform this session has been something else to watch.
Yeah.
All right, we hope you have a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Think while you're out there about all those workers that it takes to make our society run, and we appreciate your time.